Hi there, and welcome to our THEMS presentation around a new model for healing, the Biopsychosocial-Spiritual approach. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the first owners of the land from which I tune in from, along with my co-presenter Jenny. And we'd also like to acknowledge any individuals with lived experience of mental health, neurodivergence, or trauma that are joining us today. I'd love to introduce my co-host, Jenny. Jenny is the mental health lead at Spiritual Health Association, and we've been working together throughout the past year around the areas of mental health, lived experience, and spiritual care.
Thank you, Hannah. And it's my privilege to introduce to our audience today, Hannah Friebel, who has come into my life this year, and we have had some wonderful engagement together, exploring the place of spirituality, spiritual care in contemporary mental health care. And Hannah is informed by her lived experience, her professional background of psychology and now spiritual care, the arts and dance. She is a very dynamic and very accomplished young woman. And I'm thrilled to be interviewing her today about a new model for healing, the biopsychosocial-spiritual model of care. So, would you like to share a little bit with me, myself and the audience about how you came to intersect with mental health care and spiritual care?
Yeah, so I grew up in a community of faith. I was actually faith captain in my final year of high school, and spirituality was very important to me. But it wasn't until I was admitted in 2015 for an episode of ill health involuntarily in the public system that I realized that maybe this area of mental health and spiritual care is not as progressed as we need it to be, and we need to talk more about it. And so when I was an inpatient, I was made to feel as though my spirituality was actually a form of pathology, was part of my illness. And I really felt as though my spirituality was not acknowledged or even seen as a protective mechanism for my mental health and recovery. And it wasn't until I later pursued training in psychology and spiritual care that I found my way back to reconcile these two areas and frameworks of thought and theory and practice to each other. And yeah, I mean, I found my way back to it, and it's been very rewarding.
It just occurred to me that you are almost like a living example of holistic, person-centered idea, in as much as you have put the fragments back together into the whole. And that's what often people who go through the mental health system say, that they're, you know, the treatment and the care is very fragmented, and it doesn't actually meet them where they're at and where healing needs to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes time and to really look at person-centered care. In order to do person-centered care in an authentic way, we need to be looking at the whole entirety of the person, and that includes the spirituality. It also includes, you know, the other things as well. But for this focus, we're really looking at that spiritual aspect. And when I talk about spirituality, I'm not necessarily saying religion. It can be religious orientation for some people that gives them their meaning and their sense of spirituality and spiritual care and health. But when I talk about spirituality, and I believe when Spiritual Health Association talks about it, we talk about connection, we talk about meaning and identity, and I think bringing, you know, all the different aspects of an individual together into one place to really say, you know, you are valued as a whole person, not just on the basis of, you know, one aspect of recovery. So yeah.
Well, talking about spirituality in the different ways that we can express our spirituality. This sort of ties into another incredible project that you've been involved in, which is a film by the name of Sincerely Survivor, which brings together another aspect of your expression in life, which is your creative arts and dance expression. Would you like to share with people a little bit about how that project came to be?
Absolutely. So I think it was about 3 years into my recovery journey, I got to a point where I was tired of talk therapy. I was tired of just verbally processing everything that had been on. And as a dancer, I felt I needed to use my body and my talent to tell my story. And so I actually got a group of dance artists together, and I directed a film that was created on a site-specific venue in the abandoned psychiatric institutions of old. And we went into these spaces to honor the stories that were there and destigmatize the way we talk about these asylums, looking at, a person-centered view, but also, telling the untold stories. And so we basically, I found a way to tell my story through the modality of my choice. And that was so powerful for me. And on a spiritual care sort of space, we looked at how I could, reclaim my story through the arts, but also find a new identity post-recovery, post-hospitalization, and kind of really find a new purpose in advocacy. And that initiative is called Sincerely Survivor, and you'll see on the end screen slides that a way to connect with us on our website later on.
Yes, it's well worth exploring that piece of work. It's phenomenal. As we draw to a close, we have often, when we've got together, talked about the intersection of peer work and spiritual care work and how they meet in the middle to really recognize and authenticate a person's and empower a person in their story, in their narrative. Would you like to just talk a little bit more about your impressions of the CPE, the Clinical Pastoral Education training unit that you undertook earlier this year?
Absolutely. So I went into clinical pastoral education not really knowing what it would look like. It was huge.
It's huge.
The CPE was originally founded by a man called Anton Boyson, and Anton Boyson was actually a fellow survivor of the mental health system, also a service user. He was admitted as an inpatient and was told he was too sick to go home, but too bored to do nothing. So he started creating this modality of care, which looks at the spiritual realm of an individual. And I think from that standpoint, my engagement with CPE was a really beautiful way to integrate the lived experience that I have as a consumer, but also start to look at the bigger questions or existential issues that we all face. And from that perspective, I think CPE, like peer work, is also non-pathologizing. And we don't say, oh, you need to be fixed, you've got issues. We say, how can we help you emerge through this time? How can you emerge stronger and find your purpose, your identity, your meaning, hope in all of this, which I think are inherently very powerful things to bring to a caring practice.
Incredible. Thank you, Hannah. We're just about out of time. Do you have any final closing remarks that you would like to share with our audience today?
I just really love to invite everyone to really reflect on their spirituality and how that applies to their practice, but also consider coming along to our later presentation in Rights and Values this afternoon. Thanks so much for tuning in, and check out our contact details on the screen.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for being in conversation with me this afternoon.